do not bother yourself to become too much infatuated with Krishna. Rather, act in such a way that Lord Krishna may become ever more infatuated with you. By dancing and chanting in the proximity of Radharani's infinite love flame. Radharani, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. You know, that is Sankirtan. Mahamantra Sankirtan means the soul is dancing in the proximity of Radha's love flame. What happens? You see, it's described how the spirit spark has fallen away from the fire, you know, and sometimes lands on dry grass, sometimes on wet grass, or sometimes in water and is completely extinguished, compared to Sattva-gun, Rajagun, and Tamagun, you know, like that, when he falls into this material. Karanam guna sangasya sarasat janma yonishu. So when the spirit spark falls away, then the natural brilliance of the soul is diminished terribly. But when the spark comes into the proximity of the fire, then the spark begins to glow brilliant again. So if you have a fire, a big fire, that looks very nice, like if you're sitting around the fireplace. So the when you're watching a fire, fire looks nice, but what makes the fire look nice, even more nice, is when there are many sparks dancing around. Then the fire looks like it's an ecstasy, doesn't it? Mm. If there's no fire, then okay, it's nice. But if there's some sparks, you know, dancing around on the top of the fire, then the fire looks very, let's say, extraordinarily beautified by the sparks. Sparks are insignificant. In of themselves, the sparks have practically no power. But when dancing in proximity of the fire, they serve to beautify the fire, right? Similarly, the fire itself is beautifying the spark, because without the fire, without the proximity of the fire, or without being in the fire's proximity, the spark, you know, wouldn't have its natural resilience, or radiance, I mean to say. You know, so therefore, Sankirtan means to dance in the proximity of Radha's love flame. Radha's love flame is also represented in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his performance of Sankirtan. So dancing in the Sankirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know, just like at the Keturi festival, Narottam Das Thakur's chanting was so powerful and pure that the whole Panchatattva, including Lord Chaitanya, you know, came to dance in their midst. And in fact, you know, anyone who's chanting Shuddhanam, you know, can elicit the presence of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, at least in the form of their holy name. So therefore, the presence of Harinam and Harenam, Haranam, you know, Radhanam, you know, means that by many devotees dancing and chanting in proximity of the holy name, the performance of, or the holy name becomes glorified, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the natural Krishna consciousness, or you can say that natural street disposition of the soul, which is feminine in quality, which is pure ananda, pure bliss in the matter of selfless service to the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna, you know, becomes illuminated in the heart of the devotee. That street disposition becomes illuminated. In other words, enlightened. The spark, by associating in the Sankirtan performance, you know, chanting Mahamantra Sankirtan, that becomes enlightened and becomes scientifically acquainted with his own natural street disposition as a minute, let's say, eternally separated aspect of that counterpart, feminine, aspect of divinity. You don't get bhakti. You get freedom from material contamination and arjanavritti, which is useful to a certain extent, but only to a certain extent. Crying and crying and crying for Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Shuddhanam cannot be chanted by anyone. Shuddhanam has to condescend by his own free will to descend from Golokya Premanam, Harinam Sankirtan, and dance on your tongue. It's Shuddhanam dancing. It's looking like the devotee is chanting, so the devotee is getting credit for being the instrument. But actually, it is Nam, by his own sweet will, dancing on the tongue of the devotee. It's not the devotee chanting. It's Nam dancing, making it look like the devotee is chanting. But in reality, it's Nam dancing. And only when Nam is satisfied, pleased in some way, generally by the nishtata, determined, strongly determined Nam bhajan. Then when Krishna sees that you're actually serious, you're trying to do Nam bhajan, you're doing Abhas Nam bhajan, but Krishna sees that if you're actually crying, it's not that you're not supposed to cry for Krishna's mercy when you're chanting the holy name. At least that kind of crying we have to start with. And anyone can start with it. Because it's not that you have to be high, exalted devotee to start crying because you can't cry for Krishna's mercy. Rule number one, hard-hearted nonsense. Rascal. At least we can cry, because we can cry for mercy because we're so fallen. It doesn't take much intelligence. That's the meaning of Sumedha Saha. Jagyai Sankirtan Prayarya Jantihi Sumedha Saha. Means to recognize, enough intelligence to recognize that you're fallen, that you're one of the patit people of this Kali Yuga. And therefore we need to take shelter of the process that Lord Chaitanya, who appears as the golden Yuga avatar, acting in the capacity of Yuga avatar, he establishes the Yuga Dharma, Sankirtan Jagya. And primarily he establishes Mahamantra Sankirtan. Other mantras and Goswami songs and these things, they may be considered as expansions of the Mahamantra, but the Mukhya mantra for this age of Kali is Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That is the Tarak Brahma Kirtan mantra for this age of Kali. Because you have a desire, to please Krishna. Because our sadhu sangha should have impressed that upon us from the very beginning. From the time we walk through the doors of the Krishna consciousness movement, we're supposed to be trained about the importance of considering the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. Therefore, we sacrifice for their pleasure. We learn the principle of sacrificing for their pleasure without any ulterior motives involved. Simply to please Krishna. And that is genuine, pure devotional training. Such a person who has that kind of sharanagati, who is Shraddhavan, he has the right, under the auspices of the Guru Parampara, to perform Sankirtan Yajna. Even though he may be on the clearing stage in the beginning, but the aim is to satisfy Krishna. Because that groundwork is there. Because the heart is becoming softened by the cultivation of that temperament, that mood of desiring to satisfy Krishna. Means anukulena Krishnanushilanam. Means Krishna Indriya Priti Ishta, to have the desire to satisfy the senses of Krishna. It means that we're, from the very beginning, Shraddha means the seed of prema. Shraddha is not the seed of anything other than the prema bhakti lata. From the prema bhakti lata, you can expect to get the fruit of prema. Ultimately, the ripened fruit of prema. So, these things we need to consider if we're going to actually perform Sankirtan Yajna in a viable way, as instruments in the hands of the predecessor acharyas. Otherwise, what the hell are we doing? Fun and games. But if we want to spread the bhakti cult, if we actually want to assist in spreading Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, which is meant for the purpose of broadcasting love of Godhead to the fallen conditioned souls of this world. Love of Godhead means prema bhakti, please. So it's got to be based, if it's not based on the actual seed of the prema bhakti lata, pure devotional shraddha, then what is it? It's shraddha abhas, which means bhakti abhas, which means bhava abhas. And you'll never get prema that way. So our purpose in performing Sankirtan is for augmenting bhakti in the hearts, in our hearts, and in the hearts of the people who associate with us. There should be no other purpose. There should be no other purpose. There should be no other purpose.